Recording button. Double tap to
Okay,
activate.
we are going to whip stitch our elastic into our waistband. So the first thing we need to do is take our yarn and thread it through the needle. I love these big needles. Some people call them upholstery needles. They have a very, very large eye that is very easy to feel, and you can get yarn through it. With the smaller needles, for somebody like myself who's visually impaired, it's much harder to do by feel, and you can't always get yarn through it. And as I've said in previous videos, when I'm trying to sew a hem into a knitted project, I really like to use the yarn from the project so it matches. Even though this is going on the inside in the waistband, I still want it to match as close as possible. So now I've got the yarn through the eye of the needle, and we need to tie a knot. So what I do is I take the end, the opposite end, right, of the yarn, and I drape it over the needle. So I've got just a little bit of a tail sticking out. And then I wrap it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I wrap my yarn around there several times so that I get a nice big knot. You don't want to make it too tight till you get it over the end of your needle. And then you just pull it and pull it and pull it until you get your knot to the end, to the very end of your yarn. And there I have a nice big knot that I can work with. I don't have to worry about it too much. You don't want it so big because this is going to go inside your skirt. It doesn't have to be super small because you don't want it to pull through the fibers of your yarn. But at the same time, you don't want it so big that it's uncomfortable. But in the end, we're going to tuck that knot inside the waistband of our skirt. So it really doesn't have to be super pretty, super, doesn't have to look great because it's going to be on the inside. Our skirt is wrong side out. As you can see, this is the skirt in the Astoria tonal yarn that's been in many videos. I have a knit to, purl to waistband casing. And I've done what I call a turning row, which I've explained in many videos, where I do the opposite, purl to, knit to create a tactile ridge. Because I'm visually impaired, I can't see straight, I can't sew straight. The only way I have a chance of getting this waistband sewed in straight is to have something tactile that I can follow. So that's why I do that. So my skirt is inside out right now. And now I'm going to take my elastic that I've already sewn together. I've showed that to you in a previous video that said let's talk about, I think, waistbands, skirt design. And so I've showed that to you. I've already put the elastic on my body. I've measured it exactly where I want it to fit on my body, which is just below my belly button. I've sewed it together so that it's stuck in a loop, right? You need to do that. I just use a running stitch with a little bit of yarn. This elastic is going to be sewn inside the waistband. So it doesn't have to be neat. It doesn't have to be tidy. No one's going to see it, okay? So now you want to drape it over the top part of the waistband so that it's below the fold, the knit to, purl to fold. And you'll want to have had your elastic picked out already when you designed your garment so that you know that your elastic fits, right? You need to have a waistband an elastic that fits. So if you pick elastic that's too wide, or maybe you didn't make your waistband wide enough, it's not going to fit in between your fold. Once you do that, then you want to fold over the top half of the waistband, over the top of the elastic. You want to stretch, but you don't want to super stretch, right? You don't want it to be to the point where it's overstretched. You want it to be where it's going to be the relaxed, natural position that you want your skirt. Now, I went ahead and marked right after this where I put a stitch marker in there. This next knit to section, that's what I want to work into. So I'm going to, let's see there. I'm going to line that up. This is the hard part for me to do by feel. This is definitely the hard part, is getting that lined up exactly where I want to work into. Sorry if this is a little bit fiddly for me to do, and it's also a really, really bad angle for me to work at, so I apologize for that. But I've got that lined up there. So now I want to take my yarn and my needle, and I can go ahead and even stick this tail inside the garment, because that's what you're going to do with it. You're just going to stick it inside there. So I want to grab this project, and I want to go in from, let's see, I hope I'm on camera. That's the hard part for me too, because I can't really see what I'm doing. I want to go in to my garment. Oh my goodness, I hope I'm doing this correctly. Okay, I hope I'm on camera. I want to go into my garment just on the wrong side where the stockinette is, right at that divide between where I switch from stockinette to ribbing. I want to go into that on the inside of the skirt side, on the stockinette side, and then I want to feel where my ribbing's at, and I want to grab where I have the stitch marker. That's not where I want to go. I want to go into the very next knit rib there. And so I want to grab and stick my needle in from underneath, right? We're going from the underneath to the top. And I want to pull that yarn. Hopefully it's not tangled. That's always an issue too. You want a long piece of yarn so that makes it around the waistband, but not so long that it ends up getting super tangled, because that, of course, is a real pain too. So, and now we can tuck our tail inside of there. And as I said in a previous video, if you're whip stitching, that's what we're doing here today. We are whip stitching. If you are whip stitching by feel, it can seem like a slow and tedious process, because you want to check your stitching every couple of stitches to make sure that you aren't pulling it too tight, so that your waistband isn't crooked. Otherwise, you're just going to have to rip it out and do the whole thing again. I know that from experience. I've done that. So now we want to go back in from the stockinette side, right, on the inside of the skirt, and we want to go up from the underside up to the top. So it's coming out the top, and we want to pull our yarn through. That's all whip stitching is. Whip stitching is super simple. It's super easy. It's not a fancy stitch, and it doesn't have to be, because it's going on the inside of your garment. It's going on the waistband of your garment on the inside. We just want to close this hole up, right? All we're doing is trying to encase our elastic on the inside. So we don't need a fancy stitch. Whip stitching is one of the simplest, one of the easiest stitches, and it's really handy to know. It's good for waistbands, it's good for hems, it's good for amigurumi if you're sewing on heads and pieces, right? So it's a very basic, simple stitch. And I just did it again. So here we go again. We're going to go from the inside where the stockinette stitching is, and we're going to go up from the inside. We're going to poke up from that fabric. We're going to go from the underneath to the top side of the ribbing, right? That's where we want to go, to the ribbing. I want to make sure I get that lined up straight. I can't tell for sure, but I think so. Okay, maybe. I don't want to go up too high either. It's okay. So now we got it through there, and we're going to pull the yarn through. You can absolutely whip stitch by feel, but just stop and feel your stitches every couple stitches, and make sure, right? Make sure that they're straight. They don't have to be super tight or super tiny. In fact, you don't want them super tight and super tiny because then they will start pulling your fabric to the left, and you don't want that. Then your waistband just ends up slanted. So from the stockinette side, underneath, up through the loops, then up into the ribbing, right? Up into the ribbing. And pull, grab your needle, pull it through. And then you go back down into the fabric, stockinette side, go up from the underneath into the ribbing, grab your needle from the top, pull it through. If you can see, whip stitching is really pretty fast. It's a fast, simple, plain stitch. If you're doing it by feel, I can't overemphasize that enough. Go slowly and pause every couple stitches to feel your work and make sure that it's even so that you don't rip it out. Make sure that you're not pulling it too tight. I will do that with you a couple more times, okay? Come up from the stockinette side underneath, go up through that loop, then go up into your ribbing and pull the yarn through to the top. Now I want to make sure that my stitches are even, right? This is a waistband, so that they're even and that they're not pulling it too tight. And I want to check here and make sure that my ribs, right? I got ribbing here, that my ribs are still lined up. So now, again, we're on the underside of the stockinette side. We're going to go up through the loops. Then we're going to go from the underneath, from the second layer, up into that. So we're back up in the ribbing, so the needle's on the top side. You pull your needle through and pull that yarn all the way through. And you just keep doing this round and round and round until you get back to your yarn. I'm going to go all the way around, so I'm going to feel that stitch marker and know I'm just about to my end. And that's definitely a good time to make sure I got my knot there and just tuck that inside. So that's why you don't want a super small knot, because you don't want to pull through the yarn, the holes in the yarn. You don't want it so big that it's going to be uncomfortable, but you can make a fairly big knot and it's just going to get sewed inside of there. So this is, like I said, if you can see, it should be fast for you. If it's your first time though doing it, even if you're sighted, just take it slow. Even sighted people should stop and eyeball, right? Look at and feel your work regularly, especially if it's your first time to do it. And it is totally okay if you have to rip it out and do it again. One waistband just for me can take me hours because I want it to be even. I want stitches even. I want it straight. So it's a slow process, but don't let anybody tell you can't do it just because you can't see. Maybe you're blind or visually impaired and you want to try making garments. Maybe you've only knit and crochet dishcloths and scarves or something, and you're like, you know what? I want to do garments. I want to expand it and I can't see. Well, don't let anybody tell you that you can't do this. You absolutely can do this by feel. And if you've been knitting or crocheting for decades, right, and you're starting to have vision issues, changes in your eyesight, perhaps due to aging or something, and you're thinking, oh no, I might have to give this up because I can't see my stitches anymore, you do not. You absolutely do not. Don't let anybody tell you you have to stop knitting or crocheting because you can't see your work. anymore. You do, if you've been knitting and crocheting for decades and you're starting to have vision issues, a lot of it's already going to be muscle memory. Your body knows what to do. Your fingers know what to do. They know the motions, right? They know the motions. So don't let the changes in your eyesight keep you from still enjoying your hobby. And don't let other people tell you that either, because other people will definitely try and tell you that. Oh, you can't do that anymore. Oh, you're gonna have to give that up. Don't let that happen. If it brings you joy, if it brings you happiness, if it's your comfort, if it's your happy place, if it's your peace, then you just keep stitching. You just keep doing what you know, and you keep stitching. Okay? So, I'm not going to whip stitch this whole waistband with you because it is a really slow process for me. So, but I will stop again. We'll come back. We'll check out my work here. Right, this is where we started, where my stitch marker is. This is where we started. You can see the stitches. You can see what a whip stitch looks like. I try to get my stitches evenly spaced. Do I? No, not totally. Even I can feel that my stitches are far from perfect, right? I can feel that. Am I going to rip it out? No, not as long as it's straight. If it's straight and it's not pulling anything too tight, I'm going to go ahead and leave it. If my knit 2, purl 2, right, if my stitches are still matching up here, then I'm going to go ahead and leave it, even if my stitches are not perfectly spaced apart. And you can already see, we can turn it, so this is going to be the outside. This is what other people are going to see, right? This is what they'll see. This is the section that we've worked. And this is why I do try to match my yarn to my project if at all possible. Some people would use a different thread or whatever. You could certainly use a finer thread. If I could see color, if you don't know yet, I am completely colorblind. And so for me to try to match another thread to my yarn, I can't do it. I literally can't see color. I've never seen color. And so I wouldn't even know how to match another alternative thread to my yarn. And so it works far better for me to just use a strand of the yarn from the project, and that way it blends in. So even if my stitches aren't quite perfect, right, on the purl section, that's really where they show up. I can feel them. On the knit section, they totally blend in. On that purl section, they do stick out a little bit. So that's why I just use my same yarn from my project, and that way if it's sticking out even on the outside of the project, it's not going to be super visible. So if you can't see, or you're colorblind like me, that would be my recommendation, is just use yarn from your project and don't try to match up another yarn or another thread. And that's why these great big needles, these big upholstery needles, I guess is what some people call them, are necessary, because you're likely not going to get, this is a DK weight yarn, it's an 8-ply, you're likely not going to be able to get that through the eye of a standard knitting needle. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and pause this video and work on my waistband some more.
Pause. Pause.
Okay, well, I am impressed with myself. Here we are. I haven't had to rip out any stitches on my whip stitching. It didn't take me as long as it sometimes does, but here we are. We can feel, we can see what we got going on here. We got about 4 more stitches to go. As I said in my previous video on skirt design, we are playing just a little bit of yarn chicken here. I'm going to try what I can to make this yarn work over these last 4 stitches or so, 5 stitches. This is what we got left. Not too much. maybe a few inches. I don't know, maybe like 4 inches or something, but we're going to make it work. It's going to work. And I do have just a little piece of my tail left over too. So I can always patch that in if necessary, but at this point, I would rather not. So again, whip stitch from the stockinette side, right? And the underneath on the inside, up through the top. We got one more to do. Stockinette side, come up from underneath into the ribbing. There we go. We have made it back around. So now we're going to just go in here underneath. We got to tie this off, right? We got to secure it with a knot. We don't want to take too many stitches here, but we do want to grab just a couple of stitches. We want to stick our needle through there. We want to pull it through. We got a little bit of a yarn tail left here. We want to stick our needle through it. We want to pull it through. And we want to do that a few times so that we got a nice secure knot on the inside of our waistband. And if you're like me, yeah, that's what happens when my yarn gets short. I pulled my needle off of there. We will see if I can possibly just stick that through there. Okay, waistband is secure. We're going to tie down that knot. I might go ahead and I might stick my needle back on there and try to work this little bit of yarn in, weave it in just a little bit more. So I got to find that blunt end, stick this little bit of tail back in there. We're going to go ahead and weave through these stitches a little bit. Just to weave in our piece of yarn here. We might as well get this yarn nice and tight in here, right? Yeah. Yeah. We got some gaps in here anyways, where we pulled our stitches a little bit. We can put our yarn through there. I just pulled my yarn off my needle again, but we will make this work. Absolutely. So I'm just going to keep weaving in this yarn just a little bit. You want to go in and out, back and forth, into your yarn, into your garment, just a little bit. Maybe knot it one more time, tuck it in, and then we will cut that off and call it good. And we will call our whip stitching. We have just sewed our elastic into our waistband. So that's what it looks like on the inside, right? It can be a little bit messy on the inside. That's totally okay. And now we're going to turn our skirt back. We're flipping our skirt so that it is right side out. And this is what our waistband looks like. Because it is a double thickness with elastic, it is a little chunky. If that's not your thing, you'll have to figure out something else to do. I don't mind it. The extra bulk in the waist doesn't bother me. On the knit sections, it feels really smooth. On the purl sections, it's got just a little bit of a ridge there, not too much, which is, again, as I said, why we do the matching yarn. So let me see if I can
Zoom one button.
Zoom
out.
out.
Selected.
There you go. So you can see what the waistband looks like. That's what it looks like with the elastic sewn in. And you can see there's the other side. So that is how you whip stitch elastic into a skirt. That's how you make a waistband for skirts, for shorts, for pants, with your own hand knit garments. That's how you can put elastic in and get a good fit.
Pause.
And here it is off. I got the phone back off the tripod so people can see it a little bit better. This is what the finished skirt looks like. This is our finished project right here. Hang on. Okay, sorry about that. I should have put the phone on pause again. But here is what it looks like. We've got our elastic in the waistband. And you can see the sides flare out. You can see the points on the edge of the skirt. And that's the final video of the skirt. Is it the end of the Astoria tonal on my channel? Oh no, I got 4 more skeins, but we are going to take a pause from it. So thanks so much for tuning into this video, learning how to whip stitch and how to use and sew a waistband casing into any kind of garment, whether it's a skirt or shorts or pants or even stockings. I showed the vine lace stockings on my channel, and I use the exact same method, right? The exact same method to sew in the elastic on the top. So thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Ah.